In the past year, there's no single Bloodline member, no member of the WWE roster as a whole, who has made the impact that Jacob Fatu has. The fact that he is the least established on the roster of WWE of any of his Samoan family counterparts makes it even more impressive that he's done it so quickly. Obviously, he had a lot of time on televised wrestling before WWE with MLW, but this is something where you can clearly see him exceeding expectations and delivering on anticipation. He's been around for less than a year, and it's hard to see anybody having a bigger future than him right now. I was at his debut in Chicago at SmackDown, and he completely wrecked Cody Rhodes the first time you saw him on television. That says a lot about what WWE thinks of him. Across the board in WWE right now, the various all-star members of the Bloodline are still having quite the featured roles. After winning the Royal Rumble, Jey Uso is set for a big WrestleMania in the present. Roman Reigns may never hit the peak he did with his very long, record-breaking run as undisputed Universal Champion, but he's still one of the biggest names in the business. However, in all of that, the future might just belong to one name in this group: Jacob Fatu, the man who claims even on his bad day, you still can't touch him. The Samoan werewolf is out for domination, whether you like him or not. And if WWE is intent on pushing him to be one of the brightest future stars of the company, then he's going to lead his own bloodline. The momentum is there on SmackDown earlier this year with a wild-eyed Jacob Fatu sharing to the fans all around the world and those not on his side in the arena. The crazy thing is, I'm just getting started. So let's jump into the possibilities of a Jacob Fatu-led bloodline and why it can change WWE forever. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin, and we're going to do what we do. You do your thing in the comments below. Let us know what you think of this idea, and maybe give us your fantasy booking as well. Some of you might be thinking, oh no, not another Bloodline story. They've been doing this for years, and we hear you. But what we're suggesting is another different version of the Bloodline, a new evolution. Something old you've seen before, but definitely more for some newer eyes to catch on to it. At this point, the Bloodline story is now the longest running active storyline, if you want to call it that, in WWE history. Some claim it's ended and restarted at different points, but you kind of get the idea. In terms of a continuous act in WWE, this is one that has been around a long time. Throughout their time, we've seen it take a few different forms and shapes, helping the story continue from weeks to years, just like a classic soap opera, a saga with body slam, an internal family drama. But wouldn't it be surprising if Jacob Fatu shook it all up and pulled a solo Sikoa to get the lead role? Even before Jacob made his way to WWE, back when his signing was an open secret in wrestling circles, there was a sentiment of some fans that with his sheer undeniable skills as a super heavyweight who could move like a cruiserweight and his just leap off the screen personality, that he could overshadow someone like Solo Sikoa. This was obviously in smaller segments of fans who were aware of his work in MLW, but the sentiment seems to have been shared among even higher-ups, all the way down to the casual fans just catching up with the Jacob Fatu power train as it roars into town. But in no time, this sentiment has been proven to be more than correct. Within a few weeks of his debut, Fatu was getting some of the biggest reactions of anyone in the Bloodline, and he just reeked of awesomeness. Yeah, shout out Edge and Christian. Yeah, fans began to go along with his shouts of, "I love you, Solo!" What Jacob Fatu brought was just undeniable presence on camera. He didn't say a lot of words, but when he said them loudly and they meant something. He wrestled a little bit sporadically, but kicked absolute ass in a way that is undeniable, and his dominance and aura, we gotta stop overusing that word, has also been an instant connection with fans. It became clear that he was the real star of the new Bloodline, not exactly the leader, Solo Sikoa, and it was the enforcer who was really taking the spotlight with Jacob Fatu. That began a series of questions like, when is Jacob's turn to shine? The fact that you can see the impression he makes on crowds means that WWE's higher brass has to be paying attention to this, and that they have a generational talent on their hands. Some members of the Anawahi clan have also come out and said that Jacob Fatu is among the most talented wrestlers to ever come out of that family. And that is saying something. Check out our big Samoan Wrestling Dynasty video to learn about all of that history. It's on the channel. So how exactly do we get Jacob Fatu leading the Bloodline? How is WWE going to do this? This is all just fantasy booking. We're laying out a handful of ideas. You can tell us yours in the comments below. It turns out that the first part is pretty simple. Solo Sikoa's quest to become the true tribal chief by usurping Roman Reigns ended in failure on the Raw Netflix debut in a big way. After losing multiple shots at the WWE Championship and only getting a win in a tag team match over Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel, it's been the OTC who stood tall, winning the War Games match and then leading to the Tribal Combat match on that Raw Netflix premiere. This is the seed that has been planted into our heads, and after WrestleMania, Solo's attempts at being met with failure after failure will drive others to respond. The shouts of, "I love you, Solo!" have begun to reduce with every passing week, and the doubt in Jacob Fatu's eyes starts to show. The unwavering loyalty he had to Solo gets shaken, stirred, and eventually it reaches a point where Solo has no credibility in Jacob's domineering eyes anymore. This is where the betrayal happens, and it can't be Solo turning on Jacob to make him a good guy or a baby face, whatever those technical terms are. It has to be Jacob Fatu viciously severing his ties with Solo by taking him out before announcing the birth of a new generation, a fresher, more ruthless incarnation of the Bloodline. In fact, it's probably better to have the name Bloodline be taken out of it, merely implying a separate branch of the Anawahi family, something new, something different, and with him the two Tongans, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, would follow. Now, looking back at Roman Reigns' bloodline and Solo's group, there's a key difference. While Roman Reigns was more cold and calculated and hubris and filled with his own BS and was using his entire family to be manipulative and target himself, all those different things, he also had the wise man in his ear the entire time strategically planning. Solo Sikoa's bloodline was all about chaos. As Paul Heyman declared, it was comprised of a couple of Tongan thugs and Jacob Fatu, who has a criminal history. There was a lot less strategy, a lot more destruction, a lot more mindless violence, which is what ultimately led to the big downfall. Maybe eventually it was just, hey, you don't have a game plan, you're just playing the game. So in what this direction does, Jacob Fatu's bloodline has to go maybe a little bit of what Roman did. Fatu doesn't seem like the type of person you would consider a master manipulator, but that's where the surprises need to come in. You would think that a Jacob Fatu bloodline faction would take after Solo Sikoa and unleash destruction with no true understanding of their motives or the consequences of what they're doing, but that's exactly where it becomes Jacob Fatu's time to shine. He proves himself to be a whole lot more than just an enforcer, a whole lot more than muscle who can kick people's asses. He will still do that. It would be a cool story to even have maybe Paul Heyman end his time with Roman Reigns in favor of Jacob Fatu. Heyman has been great to Roman Reigns in the bloodline, and there's still a little else that he can do here together, and considering how they've been at their peak of the industry year after year, Heyman has been certainly at the table for it creatively. He would need to have a role in all of this. Like Roman Reigns, Jacob Fatu won't need Paul Heyman to do his talking, but it would be a good way to have an advisor do his bidding. By doing this, you would essentially have Jacob Fatu completely decimate both Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns. There is no way to do this without the big confrontation leading to yet another tribal combat clash of the century. On his path to destruction, he could defeat Solo Sikoa in a major premium live event and then get his marquee SummerSlam match against Roman Reigns, possibly headlining one of the two nights that's coming up here. Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa get involved, but they get taken out. Jacob utilizing some of the old cheating interference ways of Roman against Roman, but despite all of this chaos present, Jacob Fatu prevails and defeats Roman Reigns, becoming the one true tribal chief. Yes, the Ulafala has to be on the line in this match. While WWE probably can't go with a John Cena Brock Lesnar SummerSlam 2014 type of match, where one person gets completely decimated, certainly having Fatu win on this level would be significant. And the next steps would be to start expanding the ranks, and this is where a key member of the group comes in. a man who isn't even signed to WWE yet, but it still is in the conversation with those who follow everything going on with the Anawahi wrestling family, a man who is on the sidelines looking in, Zilla Fatu. It's a bit of a slippery slope to bring in Zilla Fatu, especially because he's still in his mid-20s, still learning the wrestling business and building up his name to get to the WWE, being mentored by WWE Hall of Famer Booker T, who said he will do all he can to get Zilla to the WWE. Seems to be a matter of when, maybe not if, he signs with them, and he's still currently one of the most talked about names outside of WWE or AEW. Zilla could go the solo Sikoa route, having a short NXT run, or he could be like Jacob Fatu, jumping straight to the main roster. It's going to be a hard decision to make in the context of his progression as a wrestler, but in storyline, he could be the best person to refresh the bloodline with a fresh face that is very fearsome. History repeats itself this time, with Zilla becoming not just an enforcer, but a star pupil of this version of the bloodline. If WWE wants to take an extra step and make it even more impactful, then it's probably worth signing another Samoan wrestler from this family, or someone certainly approved by the bloodline. Another name who could be even more ready for this role is Lance Anawahi, who is 33 years old, already signed to WWE's ranks, and is being developed in this phase of his career. Let's be real, there's no shortage of talents who have Samoan wrestling lineage that WWE is familiar with. With these connections, legacy, and heritage that they have coming in, it won't be surprising to see who the family continues to produce as a top-tier wrestling star in the years to come. Even Rikishi's youngest son, Samson Fatu, is 6'5" and looks like $1 million. He isn't even 18 years old yet. He's taking the college football route, but it wouldn't be surprising if an NXT NIL contract is ready and waiting for him. Perhaps WWE can take a different direction, a truly different direction with Jacob Fatu and his group, and turn them into baby faces. Yes, good guys after they've been such bad guys. Yes, they will be bad. They will do things to people you like. We get it. But if you think about it, the bloodline being baby faces is something that only became a little bit of a discussion after the summer of 2024, and that was only for a little while going into War Games, and then once again it was revived. If you have an active week-to-week good guy faction that you already understand the history with, there's a purpose to that as well. For the next few years going forward, it only feels appropriate to some of you watching this video that Jacob Fatu could be in possession of the Ula Fala, a prize that has been made as valuable as any championship in the WWE thanks to the power of good storytelling. So how do you think about Jacob Fatu taking over the bloodline and where this can go? By being an example of how an old, tried, and tested formula can be tweaked, altered, and have an extensive life on top. And if you haven't already, check out our video on how the WWE made a garland and a wristband maybe more valuable than any championship. Hit the like button, subscribe. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling.